social media was the new thing to now our agency's evolved into a real sort of modern advertising agency where we put digital and social at the front of everything. And it's all food and beverage related. It's sort of the combination of my years of experience and my partner's years of experience in the food business that has really had us understand how people tick and how people listen to messaging on social media.
And why do you feel like maybe you weren't even really aware of it at the time, maybe you were, but when brand buzzing became a thing, was it always with the knowledge that you were going after this industry? Was it always going to be aligned with food and beverage, and if I can say hospitality?
Yeah.
Or did it just kind of happen naturally that the first few clients you got were kind of that ilk, so you're like, oh, might as well just kind of stay in this lane? Or did you guys know from the tipping point, this is what we know, this is what we're confident in doing, so we're going to align with this segment of this industry and run with it?
Well, it was really interesting. 2011 was a real magical time, I think. It was right around the time where everybody started using social media to get things noticed. And it was also a time when food stopped being a second thought of something you do and became the experience to go out. So it wasn't about spending money in 2011 on new clothes or fancy nightclubs. It was really turning to food, and people were discovering that through social media. And I had come from another industry and another discipline. And I had to change. I was in the fashion business in the luxury space. And if you can think of what 2011 was like, that's 2 years after the recession. And, we've all been sort of changed and had this sort of idea of what was important to us. And I was in the magazine printing business. And let's face it, nobody read a magazine this morning, but we've all been on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever we're on these days. So it was kind of everything coming together at the same time. And Mary and I, is my partner in everything, her and I were working on this fashion mag, and we'd had to start a food department, and it really started to pique my interest in stuff I hadn't really learned. And one thing led to another. Marion was working at another business, and I guess pillow talk is how it goes. And we ended up really pushing forward with branding and buzzing. And it was some of our first few clients that really steered the boat. I was excited about craft beer in 2011. My first gig was courtesy of my good buddy Les Murray at the Toronto Festival of Beer. And it was a great time. In 2011, if you can picture what our job was, it was to do social media activation on site. And our big idea was all these people we're talking to about the festival on Twitter, why don't we invite them to this thing called the Social Lounge and have them hang out, and maybe they'll take pictures of the beer that's there and the bands and treat them as media. And we called them bloggers back then. I guess it's now influencer marketing. But it was a great fun weekend tweeting to different brands. And at the end of the weekend, the owner of Great Lakes Beer came into our tent and said, who's doing this social? I want to hire him. And that was my first client. And from there, it was like really learning an experience. And I knew nothing about food when I got in this business. I was eating slices of pizza. And when I found out I was going to eat my first beef cheek, I was scared. And now I eat absolutely everything and enjoy every bit of food and beverage now.
So as much as it was seemingly like a natural fit for you guys as a company, for you personally, it was a whole new world, really. Because like you were saying, you were eating slices of pizza, had never eaten a beef cheek, and now you're probably at times dining on foie gras and drinking Pinot Grigio from Oregon.
Yeah, in fact, I was in your town on your trip with Matt Dean Pettit and Marion, and we went to a restaurant, Abattoir. I'm sure it's still open.
Yeah.
Those two being the foodies ordered the food, which I always have them do. I go to the restaurant and I just put it in front of me. I remember hearing them joke that I was going to eat the neck of an animal. And I thought to myself, this is going to be good. Everywhere we go to eat is good. Where we work with, people are good. And whatever it is I'm eating, it's going to taste awesome. And it tasted awesome. And now I try everything. I eat everything. It's awesome. It's an awesome experience.
Do you feel like, and we don't need to discuss age, but do you feel like when you started branding and buzzing with Marion, and do you feel like when you started eating the necks of animals, you kind of really found what it is you're meant to be doing, or are you still looking for that? I just know that there's a lot of people nowadays that have said, like, even in their 40s, like they're not really doing what they really wanted to do until they're like 43 or 45 or 39 or 36. Whereas we put so much pressure on ourselves in like our young 20s or coming out of university to like find that thing that we really identify with. Do you feel like through branding and buzzing, you've really kind of discovered something that you're super passionate about, calling it food and calling it the food industry?
Yeah, I'm passionate about my job. And when I stop being passionate about it, I'll stop doing it. I've always been passionate about the work I was in. I was in the fashion business from 98 to call it almost 2011. And I loved every minute of it. And toward the end, I got tired of it, certain parts of it, but I was all in and all the way. And I think you got to do that. I think you have to dive right into what you do. And when you're not liking it anymore, move along. There's nothing worse than looking at a clock and watching it tick by and waiting to collect a
Hmm.
check, which I don't think I could ever work for someone again in that capacity. You just got to really find your purpose every day of what you need to do.
But do you
And
think
maybe as,
looking, sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go finish your thought.
Maybe as an entrepreneur or a business owner, the biggest challenge is figuring out what to do every day, let alone the what's in front of you right now that needs to get done, whether you have to approve a creative brief or do an estimate or work on set. But then there's the stuff like, what am I doing next? How am I evolving my business? Am I going to stay with the trends of food and explore this part of my business, or am I going to go into another aspect? Food is amazing. There's so many avenues in food.
Mm.
I once read a report that Restaurants Canada put out, so it's our fourth largest employer in Canada, and I believe that. Like, you think of everything from a cup of coffee, from the beans that come from the coffee, to the guy that has to source the coffee, to the delivery man of the coffee, to the coffee lids, to all kinds of stuff. There's so much business and opportunity.
Yeah, like I say in the intro, it's the most dynamic industry that there is today, and I strongly believe that. Like you said, there's just so many. I treat it like the wheel of a bike, and there's just so many different spokes to that wheel, right? Like there's that core, which is food and culture, let's call it for lack of a better term, and then from that, there's everything, like you said, from the lids to the packaging to the marketing to the advertising to the production to the sourcing, all of those things. It's amazing the reach that this industry has, and I didn't know that stat that it's the fourth largest employer in the nation, but yeah, I believe it. I
Makes
mean,
sense, right?
yeah, totally. I mean, look at all the jobs that are created because of this space.
I think
Let
of one of my brands, or one of my clients. We represent not even a piece of food, but a cooking oil, and it's the canola. Canola grows in Manitoba, and I often think the amount of stuff I've learned from them alone. Like,
Mhm.
I've met farmers, and I've learned about where our food comes from, and like really, what's the true story of our food coming from. And I've met great people along the way, and offshoots from everything. So it's not only that wheel, but the wheel connects to other wheels, and it's great. Where there are other industries where you're so specific and you're so generic, there's 4 or 5 players, and that gets
Yeah,
boring.
yeah.
Every day I could take the business in a different direction. Thank
So,
goodness.
so do you feel like I was kind of alluding to earlier? Do you feel like when you came to find branding and buzzing, and you and Marion set this kind of this voyage off? Do you feel like this food space is something that comes more naturally to you, whereas you dove right into fashion and you kind of ate it all up, for lack of a better term? Do you feel like this space better suits you as a person and your personality and what you want to be learning and sharing? Or do you feel like it doesn't matter with you, you can kind of adapt to whatever the industry is?
I think it's a bit of both. I think
Okay.
for right now in my life, this is an important part for me. Food is essential in survival. I think, like a lot of people, I'm having the green awakening. So I wouldn't want to be in an industry that was the opposite of the way the planet is going. And I feel with food, it's something that everybody needs to touch and enjoy and eat. So I'm really loving it right now. Where fashion wasn't inclusive, it felt very exclusive at the time. I
Hmm.
mean, it was the 90s where it was very, you are this or you are not that. Where now I find food very inclusive. But for now,
So
it's great. For now, I love it. I mean,
cool.
maybe they told us in college that Gen Xers would have between 3 and 5 careers. I'm on career number 3. I'm not sure what 4 is, but I definitely know what number 5 is.
What's number five?
I'm going to be Santa Claus.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you're going to be Batman, but Santa Claus is just as cool.
Yeah, I'm working on
Uh,
it.
I like to ask my guests, especially those that are entrepreneurs. The majority of them are. I like to ask my guests what advice they would give the younger version of them. So, looking back at that first conversation you had with the owner of Great Lakes after you guys kind of pulled off that social media event. I'm assuming then you're still learning so much, and you're just kind of acting as if. But what would the Sean of today say to the Sean of, the birth of branding and buzzing? What kind of advice would he share? What pearls of wisdom would he offer that Sean?
Wow, that's an interesting one. It's been a pretty smooth ride, I have to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
I think perhaps managing growth is probably the biggest thing I would have to say. We, like most companies, especially in PR and marketing and social, new companies come on board and brands rush to the new next greatest thing. And
Mhm.
we were in a time when innovation was happening and we were growing at the same time. Instagram got introduced, advertising got introduced, bloggers became influencers. And when you're that agency, you get a lot of phone calls and you really have to understand how you have to treat each client and understand their brand and know when you have a new client, you don't onboard a new employee. One thing I learned really quickly is that you can start a new employee with an existing client and they kind of train the employee, or you can do the opposite where you've got a seasoned staff member and they can help a new person, a new brand on board, but the two of them together end up looking at each other. And I think that's managing that is the biggest part of it.
Yeah, it's so interesting and great context to have moving forward, especially as you guys are experiencing so much growth in your business. Can we change speeds a bit and let's talk specifically about what you guys are doing for this industry and how it may be different from, say, marketing a piece of fashion? So, what do you think are the I mean, you can offer as many as you like, but what are like the few key things that you think differentiates the marketing that you have to consider, the decisions you have to consider moving forward, promoting, like you said, the canola oil or another or a beer brand that may be different from another industry or another product like a t-shirt or a pair of jeans? Is there anything unique that you need to be considering when you're taking something to the market and introducing it or trying to grow its reach?
Yeah, I think there's some commonalities in the food industry. Number one, the best way to sell food is to have people taste it. If you're a brand and you can do sampling every single day from your little tiny grocery store to Costco and have someone there, you will sell more than anything else. Nothing I can do can beat that. However, you can't be at every Costco and you can't have people there. So it's really understanding how do I get that food on the people's tongues and how do I get them to try it. So I believe it is a journey, and these are the pieces in the journey that you need to accomplish to find success, especially when you're using digital and social. So first, start off with what is your brand? What is it you're going to say? Who are you? Then how are we going to take that brand to market? Are we going to use influencers? Are we going to use media? What kind of content are we going to create? Then you want to take that journey and put it into a social play with some digital ads. But at the end, you really want to have an experience where people can taste and touch your food. And that kind of becomes full circle. So all of these sort of 5 steps really work whether you're a restaurant or a brand. It's like, know who you are, find out those advocates around it, use those advocates to promote and create content, create your own content, advertise your content, and then have some kind of celebration. Let people taste your food.
Yeah, so true. I think sampling is just it's such a key, like you said, allowing people to literally taste what you're doing, and I think it also gives the user or your end ideal client, the population, the public, kind of not only just to taste it, but also get a feel of like what your brand is, like what is the person that's doing the tasting wearing, how are they acting, what is the actual branding like, what is it speaking to? All these touch points I think are so important, and especially when you're doing things like tasting when you're out in the public, it really is making an impact on how your brand shows up for those people. Can we talk a bit about like what currently is in the landscape right now as far as social and digital? Like you mentioned TikTok, which is I haven't even like looked at that. I have no idea what that is yet. And we are obviously Instagram and Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of these platforms that exist. If you were to pick your number one, if I'm a new brand, I'm making gluten-free chocolate chip cookies here in Vancouver, and I'm calling branding and buzzing in Ontario saying, hey guys, like what is the one platform I need to be doubling down on? In your educated opinion, what is that and why?
Okay, I'm going to start by saying Facebook, but then everyone's going to say, really, Facebook? But I'm saying Facebook because it has all of your advertising integrated into it. You're going to spend more and more money on advertising, and your advertising is going to likely come out in the food space right now on Instagram. And you need to have a mild understanding of how to run ads through Instagram and through Facebook. So that would definitely be Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn are the next ones for our industry. We don't see a lot of people migrating to Snapchat currently. I do think we will be buying ads in the Snapchat space coming up as this new generation, this Gen Y, starts to experience food on a better level. In fact, if people mock Snapchat, go to TikTok, and you call the hashtag challenge, you'll see 4.5 million impressions of people putting bubble tea and sharing them on TikTok. 4.5 million. So if you're those bubble tea brands, that's where you need to play.
Right.
So it's really determining who you are and who your audience is. I think more than ever, we can identify who our audience is. Don't be all things to everybody. Pick 3 core audiences. We use one here in Toronto quite frequently called, and we've named her at our office, Jessica. And tell me about Jessica. Well, Jessica lives and works downtown. She may live in Liberty Village. She may be in City Place. Jessica's 25 to 35 years old. She likes regular experiences. She likes to have special occasions at her place. Like, really craft who your audience is, and then you can advertise to those individuals. And pick 3 or 4 audiences for your brand, but you can't be everything to all people.
Yeah, that's so key. I think we try at times. I know through my business, I'm learning the very hard way is like you literally can't. You can do anything, I keep telling myself, but you can't do everything. So it's like be very, very clear on what it is that you want to do and own that space as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, and we're seeing that at the agency too as we evolve. We started off as the disruptor agency that just did social media. We were very clear, and we were a line item on a marketing sheet. But now we started creating content and working with influencers, and we worked with influencers a long time ago. And then we started doing a little bit of ads, and people came to us and said, "Listen, you're doing all this stuff, but can you do our media buy? Can you do our PR?" And it's like, well, I guess if we're going to be a full service agency, we got to learn how to do that or hire appropriately, which we did. But again, I think that we have core services and then really understand who your customer is. I know we do well with restaurants. We cut our teeth with restaurants. Our very first restaurant that we converted from putting money into Toronto Life magazine and onto social media was Chef Mark McEwen. And of course, the grandfather opens up every door there. So tons of restaurants and then brands that wanted us to talk to restaurateurs. If you're a brand out there and you want to hit restaurateurs as your audience, that's us. Just really knowing where you fall in the space. We're not the kind that sells cheese strings to 5-year-olds. That's not really our space.
So do you feel like, and this is something that I'm learning now, and I'm not sure if you agree with this kind of 3 phases, but this is how I feel a lot of new businesses, entrepreneurs end up going. And it's usually, you mentioned this second phase that I personally have coined. So I look at like you have influencers. I don't mean influencers like people that have a lot of followers. I'm mean like influencing your industry. You have
Right.
influencers, you have disruptors, which you mentioned you guys were at a time, and then you have leaders. So that for me is like the natural phase for as an up and coming business. First, you're influencing a bit of your local market, maybe a little bit beyond that. Then you're disrupting your industry a bit by doing things a bit differently, and then you become the leader in your space. Do you feel like you guys have made that leap now from being the disruptors to leaders? And if so, what does that look like for you guys?
To be perfectly honest, I've never even thought of it that way.
Okay.
Meaning I'm the kind of person that just continues to do my work. And if somebody identifies us as an industry leader, I know that we've got success that way. We were nominated for a couple of awards this year. People noticed the work we were doing. I never think of myself as a leader. I'm sure we are. We've been at it long enough. But yeah, it's a different way of thinking, I suppose.
Well, I'm going to coin you guys as leaders. I think looking at what you've done and the fact that you now have grown, you're someone to me that I look at as like you're a national brand. You're not just a Ontario or a Toronto company. I think that in itself speaks a lot to the work that you guys have done and what you can do for
Yep.
other food brands and people in this industry listening. So that leads me to my next question, which I think is a great question for someone like you and doing what you do, and especially for our listeners to get more context. If people are listening right now and they're like, wow, I really like what Sean's saying. I like kind of his paradigms, the lenses he looks at things through. I wonder if we're the right client for branding and buzzing. Who is your ideal client? Is there one? And are you really picky about who you align with and who you work with nowadays?
Picky, yes. We are still a boutique agency. I cannot foresee us changing from that. Marion and I offer some similar skill sets, but completely different at the same time. And each client wants us on those projects. So that allows us to be picky. Where our ideal client or where we seem to have success in is we seem to do really well with that middle company. And there's so many of them, and so many great Canadian companies that are out there. I think of our one of our clients. I'll use our client as an example. We represent Jarritos Mexican Cola, a great brand out of Mexico, 50 years old. Everybody knows them, called Classic. Really fun brand. They're not Coke and Pepsi. They're not that massive, owned by Frito-Lay with multiple brand managers. It's an easier way to manage a budget. It's fun. So we're in that space. And then we're also not in the space. I recently was in Quebec and I tried this amazing root beer from a mom and pop shop. I wish I remembered their name because I'd give them a shout out right now. And he produces 10,000 bottles a
Wow.
season, so 40,000 units. And it's like, we're never going to be your agency. So we're right that nice middle of the road kind of space. And really, food service, consumer brands for sure, both of them, but ones that have that middle marketing, middle dollar, middle amount seems to be our sweet spot.
Is there anyone out there right now from a client standpoint where you're like, wow, I'd really like to work with these guys?
Well, after talking about not wanting the Giants, I would actually love to work with Cisco or GFS. I have
Oh
to be.
yeah?
Oh man, they have. I've watched the power that those two companies have in our marketplace, and I see the opportunity that they have to continue to grow their customer base and work with their existing suppliers. And there's so much opportunity to really change the perception of buying it from a distributor. And I feel like I could do that for them.
Wow, amazing. Well, I'm sure they are tuning into this podcast. So if you're listening and you want to deal with Sean and Marion and their team, hit them up because they're ready with open arms.
There you go.
What about as far as mentors or inspiration? I'm a big believer that the Einstein quote of "There's no such thing as original idea" is a real thing. Whether it's a painting you once saw or an ad you once saw traveling, it's going to seep into your subconscious somehow, some way, and show itself up. Obviously, with Sean's own spin on it, uniquely yours. But what are you seeing right now out there that you feel is like, wow, I really, really respect what those guys are doing or that team is doing? Or do you have a list of mentors that you look up to, whether you know them personally or they're just kind of doing their thing in Italy or in Germany or maybe even in Ontario?
Well, I think a lot of my mentorship, it comes from learning. At this stage of the game for me, I'm looking back at the things that I've learned throughout the years. There's a phrase that an old photographer friend, Walter Singh, used to say: "You're not hiring me for the photo shoot that I'm doing today. You're hiring me for the 100 ones that I did before." It's sayings like that that I really pull from. And I think of sort of some male mentors throughout the years that have like really said certain things to me or taught me how to interact with individuals, because I really believe too, it's not necessarily what you say, but how you make people feel. I feel like clarity is important. So I look at some of the mentors in the past, and some of them are friends that become friends and clients. As far as looking at other agencies, I really have never done that in my past companies I worked at. I just happen to work for the top companies, and I feel like there's an expectation. You just have to be the best. That's
Mm-hmm.
your job.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did branding and buzzing, we're a disruptor. Like I said, the disruptor agency, the new one, there was no one else really doing it. So why not go to the best
Right.
companies, the ones you want to work with? And we would do that. So
Is there anything out there in the social space or digital platform where you're like, maybe you're thumbing through Instagram, you're like, whoa, that was like really well done. You scroll back to it like, wow, that's so cool. And you're not necessarily, you may not even know the agency behind it, but obviously because of your education, you're able to kind of see the forest for the trees and you see what they're doing there. And you're like, wow, that was really smart. Is there anything that you've come across just from a brand activation standpoint that wasn't something that you did and you're like, wow, that was really cool, food or not?
yeah, I think when we see our retargeted ads done well, I think that really pays off. To be honest, I think there's a recent Coca-Cola campaign out that's partnering with Pringles on digital space, and I like seeing how they're distributing their content, how they're retargeting when you click on individuals.
Mhm.
For me, the digital tech has really uh, come to a point where it's not changing as frequently as it did in the past. It's just getting better and better at what it does. So Facebook, I think, is a great example to still continue to look at. They're constantly launching and starting new things, so they're always ones to look at. I think our Canadian company Hootsuite is a good brand that I look at that gives us some innovative tips and tricks to do.
Mhm. Is there any tools that you guys employ when working with a client that you have at your disposal now that you didn't have at your disposal, say 5 years ago, that you think are just invaluable to what you're doing in your business?
Yeah, it's the evolution of all those things. The Facebook platform has changed so much that you can manage your entire business on Facebook. We just did an event down at Stacked in Toronto. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
what
I
that
do. Yeah, it's
in your
such a
city.
cool concept. Yeah, so
Oh,
cool.
it's brilliant. We did a Day of the Dead event, and our partnership included us managing all of the PR and marketing, and we invested in a Facebook event page and used Facebook partners and didn't spend a ton of coin on the distribution of that content, but we created good content with a good funnel. If somebody clicked this, what do you serve them next? And we ended up with 7,500 people showing up to an
Wow.
event. Mind you, my friend at Beer Fest was going to say those numbers are great, but it was free and it was all ages,
Right.
but still 7,500 people all from Facebook. And when you polled people, they weren't hearing about it from anything other than Facebook. So those tools have really gotten great. I mean, we all know it. We talk about something long enough, it shows up on our phone.
Yeah.
It's pretty
That's it.
wild. And to think too, that we've been through this, this year, we had 2018 where Facebook had a black eye, with
Mhm.
Cambridge Analytica and all the stuff that came out. And I used to do talks back in 2017 and 18 saying, hey, marketers, it's going to be amazing. People are going to talk into their phone or wherever they're standing. We're going to know where they are and we're going to be able to target them on ads. And some people thought it was amazing and other people looked scared. And then the whole thing that happened with Cambridge Analytica changed that space. But it's continuing to evolve, but we always have to take back to our core of what social media is. It's not necessarily a platform. It's not necessarily a tweet. It really is two words. It's social, which is the ability to talk to one another, and media.
Mhm.
What are we using? Instagram, Twitter. So we always got to keep that lens on when we're having conversations with chefs on behalf of our brands. We have to have it social. We can't just walk into a room. You would never walk into a cocktail party and say, here, buy my product. You first say, hi, how you
Yeah.
doing? This is who I am. Oh, I like you. I like what we like in common. Oh, by the way, this is what I do. And then you talk about something else. So you got to still, that fundamental of social media is still there. So the platforms will change and we'll change with them, and our clients will change and they'll change with the platforms, but we'll still be digital and social first.
How much of what you guys do as a business do you feel with your clients, like that interaction, is in education? How much time are you spending educating your clients on things like, hey guys, this is what actually is going on Facebook, and this is what we could be doing? And they're sitting there going, that's interesting. I had no ideas. Or are they coming to you pretty privy to what's going on, excuse me, in the social digital platforms?
Yeah, I think we're there more to verify and make them feel good about the ideas that they have. I think the customer is savvy now, and they will say, "I think I need this kind of campaign," and we will either agree or retool it.
Mhm.
There is an education component of it sometimes. Quite often, I'll put together a white paper or a presentation to show what the year looked like. I'm currently working on that for 2019. What was new, what worked, what didn't work in a general speak of the industry. I'll share that with my clients and walk them through it. But generally, we create a campaign as an overall campaign and then figure out how social and digital integrates and continue your customer journey as much as possible. For example, if your goal is to send out newsletters, use social to capture newsletter addresses, email
Mhm.
addresses.
Mhm.
Create a piece of content from a campaign that you did. Show that it's exciting. Ask your people to get involved. Run a newsletter ad. If they click on the ad, do something else. All these variables that are there, and it's sort of showing the customer journey what everyone can do.
I always say to my clients that at the end of the day, this is all actually really, really easy. We just have to make sure that we're doing like the base hits, if you will. And it is really just breaking it down to steps and stages and processes. And I feel like at times people are in a bit disbelief of that because it is so dynamic, this industry that we're in. There's so many moving parts, but really at the end of the day, it is quite simple what we're trying to do, say with a restaurant, for example. Do you think at the core of what you're doing, this is really just like plug and play, or is it super dynamic and always challenging? Or are you going now because you've done it so many times, you're going, oh, I've seen this before, this is what we did, we don't need to like really overreact, we just need to react, and we do A, B, and C, and we know that's what we do and we get these results? Like, do you feel like you've done enough reps now to have that kind of mindset with your business?
Yeah, I think with the restaurants, for sure, that there is a formula to putting it together. Pitchers, everybody eats with their eyes first. The
Mhm.
phone eats first. Know that 60 to 70% of all transactions for food happen on mobile. Design your content for mobile driven. We know that just-in-time newsletters work well, so try to get your people on newsletters. So there are formulas that you can do for restaurant. I think that, keeping an up-to-date menu, understanding your brand and how it presents itself on Instagram or any social platform is important. when we worked with the launch of Smoke and Bones in 2015, they were a new barbecue place in Toronto, and they had the most media and digital hits in 1 year. And it wasn't because we sent out lots of press releases, it's because of the efforts we did on social. And it looked cool and authentic on social because it was a Southern barbecue place. All the photos looked that way. All the copy sounded. We had y'alls and comebacks, and it was a fun experience. People love theme bars and theme restaurants. They're all over our city. And they're great, and just really stay true to your brand on that when you're putting them together. So it is knowing your brand, but then there are the fundamentals. You need an Instagram account. You need to have a website where people can take reservations. You need to understand your busy times and how you're going to manage crisis if it happens. All those type of things are really key. But yeah, there's a formula to it now. I figured it out in some ways. Although
That's
that
awesome.
sounds really, I figured it all out, Brad.
No, and I think what you said earlier, like you're talking about learning, and then this is what we do. We just learn as we go, and like I said, the more we do, the more we learn. But it is nice to feel at times when you step into a meeting with a new client, and they give you kind of their reality check, if you will, and you're like, okay, yeah, this kind of you may not verbalize this. Maybe you're having the internal conversation with yourself, going like, oh, okay, this kind of looks familiar. I've been here before. I've done this before. So you have a little bit more confidence with what you're doing. This show, Sean, as you know, is called the Half a Dozen Hospitality
Oh yeah,
Podcast.
to that point, Brad, I see it a mile away.
Oh, sorry. Are you still there?
Yep.
Oh,
We're breaking up.
oh, I got you. Can you hear me okay?
Gotcha. We're back on.
Okay, we're on. Sorry, guys. Sorry, you were saying to that point.
Which one?
That's all right. Let's just reset. What I was gonna say was this show is called the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So Sean, I have for you, sir, 2 questions that I've asked every single guest over 106 episodes. So I have the same questions for you. I'm going to put you on the spot, but you're a smart, witty man. I know you can do it, and I'm here to hold your hand if you need some help. The question number 1 is the half a dozen have-tos. Help me and the listeners understand what you feel like are your have-tos, whether it is a meal you've eaten, a trip you've taken, a book you've read, a concert you've been to, something you've experienced, food related or not, marketing related or not, something you've experienced that you feel like our listeners have to experience.
Nashville hot chicken. I'm still into that. I know that it's come and gone, but I love Nashville hot chicken.
Can we shout out anyone in Toronto that's doing
Oh
that well?
yeah. Oh, in Toronto. Well, I have to be perfectly honest. My burger place, and this is not nowhere near a paid endorsement. My favorite burger place in Toronto is Rudy's Burger. They do that grill top burger, but they also offer a sandwich that's called the Valentino, and it's done with white meat and their hot sauce. It is so good. It's on a dirty bun, almost like an old school McDonald's one. It's so good. But across the street from them is the one that everybody raves about. That is PG Clucks, which is really good too in Toronto.
Okay. So
I'm heading to Kentucky to do the American Whiskey Tour on behalf of a client. Yeah, I know, hard job. Yeah. And they have some hot chicken I'm going to try down there too.
Oh, so awesome. And make sure you put that up on social so we can watch that all go down.
Yeah, I definitely will. Marion will be capturing all of it on social.
Any other have-tos? Oh,
have-tos. I think you have to discover new things. I have to be honest. I think you have to when you're going to new cities. I travel a lot with work. This year I went coast to coast with Clubhouse for Chefs from Vancouver all the way to Halifax. And I feel like you always have to try what is cool in the city, whether it's a food hall, whether it's a street vendor. You got to try that stuff. Don't go to the usual suspects over and over again, and really try new things. That's a have to try for me.
Yeah, I like that. Especially when you're traveling, there's so much you can learn through the food as well. And when you kind of get off that beaten path a bit, your education just amplifies.
You want to know a trick on how I always do it?
Yeah, I do.
City? So Google Hipster's Guide to Tacos. Everywhere you go, it's where that taco is. You can then from there find your craft beer. You can find your tattoo shop. You can get your vintage store, and I'm in heaven.
So, sorry, we're Googling Hipster's Guide to Tacos?
Yes. So if it's Kentucky, Hipster's Guide to Tacos. And from there, you'll find that taco shop and everyone else will fall into place.
I feel like you just developed an app in the last 10 seconds. It's going to be like the most successful app in the history of food.
There you go. It's all yours, Brad.
We'll own it together. The last question I have for you, sir, is the half a dozen haven't yet. So kind of a bucket list. You mentioned that you travel a lot with work, so you've seen and done quite a few things. You're going to see and do a lot more. Insert hot chicken in a couple days, couple weeks. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that's on your list that you feel like you haven't done yet? Again, related to your industry or not, just in life that you've yet to do that is on your list that you haven't yet done?
I think I'd like to help bring some kind of socially good innovation in food to market, whether it's a new seed, new plant that's been developed that's going to change our eating, or some kind of innovation around food. I think probably the lowest hanging fruit and something I'm working on is waste. I'm big into uh, eliminating, like everyone now, single-use plastic, but I've been kind of on that for the last 5 years. I haven't had a bottle of water or a coffee cup since 2016.
Oh,
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool, but I want to be a part of that. I haven't done that yet. I really want to do social good, and I think it's going to come in the way of consumption and plastic, the rest of it. Then, as far as travel and food, we're heading to Spain next year. 100% not work related, but work related because it's food. And I would love to also do India. I think are those two places that I'd like to
Oh,
really
yeah.
get into. I don't know how it will translate into work. Work is one of those things when you do well at it and you talk about it with individuals, it kind of follows you around in a nice, convenient kind of way. Like I'm going to
Mhm.
Kentucky and I'm going to taste bourbon because we have the Cheers American Spirits client. It sort of all wraps itself in one. So it's all about trying to figure out what I want to do next to satisfy those things. I'll find a client in India somehow.
I'm sure you will. To people that are listening, Sean, we have a lot of people obviously in this industry, in the hospitality space, hotels, cafes, bars, restaurants. But a lot of them are also listeners, just general population that like to listen to stories like the ones that you shared with us today and the stories from going from fashion to food. And a lot of them may be watching that clock tick away, like you mentioned, which is kind of like a shame on us if we do that. So if I can put you on the spot again, if we're offering advice to that segment of the population that maybe is doing something right now that doesn't really light them up, that they aren't really intrigued in, what are some natural steps you think they can be doing to perhaps take the leap and align themselves with something they're more passionate about?
Well, you got to find that one thing, and that one thing doesn't actually have to be a thing. And then you need to surround yourself with like-minded people because it will present itself. So I think I meet a lot of people that are like, I want to get into the food business. And you have to ask them, well, what is it that you want to do? And you find that little nugget and then you exploit it. You find that little piece that gives you passion about it and go at it and use social media to do that. So for example, if you say, I think I want to open up a pizza place, or I think I want to open up a restaurant. What kind of restaurant do you like? I like pizza. I like this. I like that. You start looking at things on social that really resonate and other people are talking about it. And then you surround yourself with those like-minded individuals and things will present themselves. I think networking is very, very key in discovering the new you.
I would love to ask you this question before I officially let you go, because networking is something that I'm always challenged with. I'm very much an extrovert. I believe you are as well. Kind of naturally, you and I walk into a room and we're just going to introduce ourselves to people. So I think it comes to us pretty naturally. But a lot of our world is introverts as well, and I'm trying to better understand them, only not only through my business but just socially as well. So you walk into a room, Sean, and you know no one, and you want to network that room, what are you looking for and what are you doing? Like, what are your actions that you do? What is this Sean Beckingham tricks, pardon me, after you found the hipster tacos and got the tattoo, you walk into this room. What is your hack on the key to networking in a new space?
You want to know the truth?
I, I, I
Okay,
can,
so
I
this
can handle the truth.
You're like, yeah, of course, Sean. What are you on this thing for? To give me BS?
Yeah.
Okay, so back when I was in the fashion industry, just a regular young guy, there were big players. And as you can imagine, in the 90s, early 2000s, these players had personalities that were larger than life. And to approach them as a young 20-year-old guy, it was intimidating. So I came up with this thing. I looked at every single person and I thought to myself, I bet you at the end of the night of them being fabulous, they go home and they call their best friend and they talked about things that mattered to them that were outside of what they did, like whether their foot hurt because the shoe was wrong or they had a bellyache. And I thought there's going to be a way to always connect with somebody, not like their best friend, but there's a human part to every single person. And then I actually thought every one of those people have to go to the toilet. And I look at them and think, wow, I wonder what kind of face they would put on the I swear, Brad. And then I look and think, oh man, they're just a regular person. Because you look at them and you think, oh, that way they smile, that looks like it could be uncomfortable on the toilet or whatever. And just go up and start talking to them. Hey, how you doing? Thinking, oh, did they have a good toilet or did they call their friend? And I swear that's all I've done. And it doesn't matter who you are. I did the same thing when I've met anyone that I think is somewhat going to be intimidating. But at this stage of the game, it's where I am in life. I don't think that there would be a spot where I could walk in a room and I would be intimidated, I guess, because we're here.
And we all
midway through. At this point, I got to be one of the ones that intimidates, I suppose, which I would never do. I honestly, if you see me at an event, I am the easiest person to approach and talk to. And this is part of who I am. I thought about it today too. I went down to my bank and I talked to my bank teller myself and introduced myself because we moved offices. And I'll talk to anybody from my banker to a CEO, and everybody has a best friend and everybody goes to the toilet. So I'm ready.
Yeah, everybody poops. That's a great spot to finish the podcast on. You guys, if you are listening on the audio platforms and you're like, cool, I don't know what Sean looks like, so if I see him in the public, I can't just go talk to him. Head over to YouTube. Check out this interview on YouTube. You can see, Sean's beautiful face and his hair. Your hair looks impeccable right now, dude.
Thank you. I'm actually growing it for charity again. Okay. Brad, shout out to everybody that I'm growing it long, and I'm going to cut it off and give it to kids that need wigs.
Man, you're like just killing it. You're helping the environment. You're helping people in need. Sean, you are a man we all need to try and be more like. And I mean that sincerely. I appreciate you making time for me and this podcast. You've always been so kind to me with your time and with your feedback, and always been so open to sharing. So thank you so much for being that person for me. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And it's been a pleasure hosting you on my podcast. If people do want to get in touch with you personally or get in touch with Branding and Buzzing, how best they reach out and how best they find you guys?
Want to get a hold of me? Text me 416-566-1594.
Wow, that's a first. That's a first on the show. Personal digits.
Text me now. Text me right now when you're reading this thing and say, I want to change my life. I'm in food. I'll text you back.
Amazing.
Watch.
And then if people want
to update, Brad, we'll update. We'll see who takes that seriously, Brad, and we can update in 6 months and see who texts me.
I would love to do that. You know what we should do? We should bring back anyone that's texted you. We should bring them on the show with you.
Perfect. 416-566-1594.
He's kind of laughing like he's crazy, and he is a little bit crazy. That's why we love him. It's Sean Beckingham from Branding and Buzzing. Sean, thank you so much again for making time for me and the guests. I truly appreciate it. If it wasn't for you, this would not have been nearly as fun. So thanks again, man, for being you and sharing everything that you shared. And thank you guys for listening and tuning in as you do week after week. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. This wouldn't exist. So I appreciate and love you all. That is it from me. That is Sean. I am Brad. This is the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. Thank you guys again for tuning in. You know what to do until next time, guys. Be good and do good. That's it. We did it.
Awesome. That went well, eh?
Yeah, man. You crushed it. One sec here. Yeah, you did so well, dude.